Hello, everyone. I was wanting to make a short video. I'm going to be in the book of Esther, give you just a little bit of background about Esther. Um, Esther was in captivity, and the king of that country, uh, he had some sort of function, and the queen didn't come. And his aides said, we can't let that happen. You can't let her get away with that. So he stepped her down as the queen. So then a search began for someone to replace her. And so, of all the people, of all the maids, he chose Esther to be his queen. So there was a man that tricked the king into making a decree to destroy all the Jews. And the word came to Esther's kin. I can't remember what kin he was to, maybe a cousin or an uncle or something like that. Might have been a cousin that was like an uncle to her. And his name was Mordecai. And it says, I'm going to start at chapter 4 and I'm going to start at verse 1. And when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and a bitter cry. And came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province wheresoever the king's commandment and decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. To know that you're about to be destroyed, that's what they chose to do. They did like Jonah. When Jonah decreed that Nineveh was going to be destroyed, they got down in sackcloth and ashes. And in the day that we're living in, the coronavirus, I don't think it's going to last forever. But even when this is over, we're in a day that we've never seen before. We need to do a little of that ourselves and come before God. So there was many weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and chamberlains came and told her that. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hattach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend unto her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So I hope I'm saying this right. So Hattach went forth to Mordecai into the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that happened unto him, and the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay the king's treasury for the Jews to destroy them. And he gave him the copy of also of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it to Esther, and declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go into the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for all her people. And Hattach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. And again, Esther spake unto Hattach and told him the commandment. And all the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court where is not called, there's one law of his to put him to death, even to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter that he may live. But I have not been called to come into the king these 30 days. That natural king there in that day, you had to be called. If you weren't called and you just came to him yourself, it meant death. That is the way it is with the King of Kings. He has to call you. And when he calls you, if he doesn't call you, it's death. So that's where the story's at. Mordecai is asking Esther to go before the king. Again, all the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever man or woman shall come to the king in the inner court, who is not called, there is but one law to put him to death, except to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter that he may live, and I have not been called to come into the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not within thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. because she was a Jew. So if the commandment to kill the Jews, and she was a Jew. For if thou altogether hold thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So if you don't move, I'm trying to move on what God wants me to do. And I know that if I don't do it, it won't strain God or grieve God too much. He'll just get somebody else to do it. So that's why I'm trying to move on this that I feel like doing. And then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer: go gather all the Jews that are present in Shushan and fast for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days and nights. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go into the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. And back a few verses ago, it says, who knoweth whether thou art come to this kingdom for such a time as this? I believe that that we're here in this time. That I was supposed to be born during this time, and so I want to do what I can. Now I'm down to chapter 5. And it said, it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. Here's Esther coming up to the king. He's sitting there, and you can't approach him. If you do, and he doesn't hold out the golden scepter, there's death. You can't barge in on the king. You can't just come to the king anytime you get ready. He has to call you. And I know when I was lost, he called me. And it was so when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Here she comes. And she's wanting to touch that golden scepter. And she just comes easy. And he holds out the golden scepter. And I don't think that when he held out the golden scepter that she said, well, I'll go in a little while. I might, 10 minutes, I might go over and touch that scepter. I imagine she ran just as hard as she could. So if God extends to you his golden scepter, you need to stretch. You need to make every effort to get to him. So she touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, what wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? Is it shall be even given to thee for half the kingdom? So the Jews were spared. That's the only way that we can be spared, is to be able to come to him and him extend his mercy, his golden scepter out to us. I think in this day, this is going to separate the sure enough from the wannabes. This trying time of the coronavirus is going to separate who really want to live for God. I know that I heard somebody refer to people as Goldilocks Christians. They never move because nothing is just right. It's if you're waiting until things get just right to move, you never will. Then I've heard people referred to as Alka-Seltzer Christians. They really fizz for a while and then they just fizz out. So let's be in this for the long run. I wished I could have put this over to you in a way that you can see what I can see in my mind. I remember when I was approaching God, I didn't barge in on him. I just eased up and touched that golden scepter. So may God be with you. May God bless you. If this helped you, let me know. And I do appreciate every bit of feedback. I've had quite a bit of it. So hopefully this will help you. If it don't, like I said in another video, if you like it, take out like you do at the table. If not, just pass it on. May God bless you.